Aiden had learned 3 things during his 2 years as a diplomatic envoy to non-human civilizations. First, never compliment an ambassador's appearance unless you were absolutely certain their species had finished molting. Second, artificial gravity was a suggestion, not a promise. Third, when a message arrived sealed with quantum encryption that made your eyeballs itch just looking at it, your day was about to get substantially worse. The message hung in the air of his quarters like a small judgmental star. Gold script twisted in dimensions his brain kept trying to pretend didn't exist. He'd been watching the battle from orbit, nursing coffee that tasted like burnt regret, thinking maybe this time humanity's diplomatic overtures wouldn't end with someone threatening to atomize a moon. The explosion of the Valiant's dream, 3,000 km below, had been beautiful in that terrible way that made him remember why he chosen words over weapons. Then the message materialized and beauty became irrelevant. Martinez burst through his door without knocking, which meant she'd received the same message, or the coffee maker was on fire again. And GT clears throat. And GT, given her expression, he suspected the former. Martinez had once convinced a sentient asteroid to alter its trajectory through nothing but patient argument and what she called aggressive reasonableness. Aiden had seen her negotiate with hive minds, quantum intelligences, and one memorable entity that existed partially in a dimension where the concept of personal space was considered a war crime. Nothing rattled her. She was rattled. And GT snorts. And GT, tell me you're not reading what I think. You're reading, she said. Aiden gestured at the floating script. Saralith Varkulith, sovereign of the Third Luminous Dynasty, requests my immediate presence aboard the war Citadel threshold of stars. Refusal is not recommended. He paused. The not recommended part is new. Usually they just write cordially. Invited and let the guns do the implying. She's never requested your presence before. She's never requested anyone's presence before. Her people handle everything through channels so Byzantine. They make our bureaucracy look like children's game. Martinez pulled up a tactical display, her fingers dancing through holographic interfaces. Aiden, she commands a fleet that could crack a moon like an egg. Her dynasty has held power for 6 centuries through a combination of military genius and political ruthlessness that makes Machiavelli look like an optimistic youth counselor. Why does she want to see you? Maybe she likes my reports. I use very professional fonts. This is not the time for your coping mechanism humor. Martinez, it's always the time for coping mechanism humor. It's called coping. But his hands were shaking slightly as he set down his coffee. The Valiant's dream had just been joined in explosive silence by 2 more rebel ships. The battle was turning into a massacre with the kind of efficiency that suggested Saralith's forces had done this before. Many times before. He'd been sent 2 months ago with clear instructions. Negotiate trade route access through Luminous Dynasty space, assess political stability, smile professionally, and try not to start an interstellar incident. His superiors had been very clear about the incident part. Humanity's alliance with Saralith's people was exactly 2 standard years old and had the structural integrity of a house made from expired crackers. They needed this relationship. they needed those trade routes they needed to not make the woman who commanded mooncracking fleets angry, and now she wanted to see him personally during an active battle with refusal not recommended. I should probably go, Aiden said. You should probably update your will. Already done. You get my collection of alien literature. Most of it's in languages we can't read yet, but I'm told the covers are lovely. Martinez didn't smile. If this goes wrong, then I'll die in space being professionally diplomatic, which is honestly more dignity than I expected from this career. He pulled on his formal jacket, the one with too many unnecessary buttons that some designer had insisted conveyed gravitas. Besides, what's she going to do? We're allies-ish, allies adjacent, allies in the same general philosophical zip code. She's currently turning an entire rebel fleet into expensive shrapnel. All the more reason to be polite. The shuttle ride through the debris field felt like descending into someone else's nightmare. Chunks of hull plating tumbled past the viewport, still glowing from whatever weapons had ended their usefulness. Aiden tried rehearsing diplomatic phrases, but his mind kept snagging on that word requests. In 17 languages and dialects, he'd learned that requests from people with overwhelming military superiority were just threats wearing formal attire. Pilot, a young officer named Chen, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else in the galaxy, announced their approach to the threshold of stars. Through the viewport, Saralith's war citadel grew from a distant gleam to an architectural impossibility that made Aiden's inner ear protest the existence of geometry itself. Sir, Chen said quietly, if you need to send any final messages. Chen, if I die, please tell my mother I went heroically, lie if necessary, she worries. Yes, sir. The citadel swallowed them like a crystal whale consuming particularly anxious plankton, and Aiden thought that whatever came next, at least his diplomatic career would end memorably. The threshold of stars was architecturally hostile to human neurology. Aiden discovered this within 30 seconds of disembarking, when the corridor decided gravity was a flexible concept, and his inner ear filed a formal complaint with his brain. The walls pulsed with bioluminescent veins that ran through the crystalline structure like the citadel had a circulatory system and wasn't shy about showing it off. Every 50 m or so, down became sideways, which became up, which became a direction his spatial reasoning simply refused to acknowledge existed. Does it help if you close your eyes? Asked one of his escorts. Aiden looked up at the guard, a towering figure in armor that seemed grown rather than forged, all organic curves and edges that gleamed like polished chitin. The guard's face was hidden behind a helmet that reflected Aiden's vaguely nauseated expression back at him in triplicate. Does it help you? Aiden managed. We evolved in 3-dimensional tidal zones. This feels nostalgic. Lucky you. I evolved in places where gravity pointed consistently downward and walls didn't breathe. Your species has such simple needs. They passed a viewport, and Aiden made the mistake of looking out. The battle continued with the methodical precision of someone assembling furniture with very explosive instructions. Saralith's fleet moved in formations that seemed to predict where the rebel ships would be before they arrived, cutting off escape vectors with the ease of someone who'd done this enough times. To make it look boring, a rebel cruiser tried a desperate flanking maneuver and simply ceased to exist, converted from functional spacecraft to expanding cloud of glowing particles in the time it took Aiden to blink. They chose poorly, the guard said. Noticing his expression, what choice did they have? And GT, surrender negotiation. Several other options that did not involve dying dramatically in the void. And GT, and those options would have worked. And GT, the guard's helmet turned toward him with a faint whir of servos. The Queen is many things, envoy. Unreasonable is not one of them. Unforgiving perhaps, but never unreasonable. And GT, Aiden wasn't sure that distinction would comfort the expanding debris cloud, but he kept that thought to himself. They continued through corridors that smelled like ozone mixed with something floral he couldn't identify. It reminded him of the time he'd visited a botanical garden that grew plants from 12 different worlds, and his allergies had achieved a kind of transcendent confusion, unable to decide which alien pollen to be most offended by. They passed other crew members, all moving with purpose through the impossible architecture. Some were tall and violet-skinned like his escorts. Others had different hues, different builds, but all shared those distinctive elongated ears that swept back from their heads like elegant accusations. A few nodded at him as they passed, one carrying what looked like either weapon or an unusually aggressive musical instrument gave him what might have been a sympathetic look. And GT, how much further? Aiden asked, mostly because the silence was becoming as oppressive as the architecture. And GT, the Queen's balcony chamber is in the heart of the Citadel. We're currently in the secondary left ventricle. And GT, your ship has a heart. And GT, all ships have hearts, envoy. Yours are just mechanical and sad. And GT, I'll have you know our ships are very efficient. And GT, efficient and sad are not mutually exclusive. And GT, Aiden couldn't argue with that. They rounded a corner that bent in a way corners shouldn't, and entered a chamber that made his brain briefly consider filing for early retirement. The space was vast with multiple levels that connected through paths his eyes insisted couldn't possibly work, but clearly did because people were walking on them. In the center, a holographic display showed the battle in miniature ships, moving like luminous insects through a three-dimensional web of tactical data. The Queen monitors 7 battles. Simultaneously, his escort said this is only one front of the current rebellions. Rebellions plural. 4 at last count, though the one in the outer helixes should resolve itself within the next standard day. That seems like a lot of rebellions for a stable government. The guard made a sound that might have been laughter. Your species mistakes stability for stagnation, envoy. Growth requires disruption. The Queen understands this. The rebels do not. They entered a lift that moved sideways, then diagonally, then in a direction Aiden's vocabulary wasn't equipped to describe. When the doors opened, he stumbled slightly and found himself facing another quarter, this one different from the others. The walls here were transparent, offering an unobstructed view of the void beyond. Ships burned in the distance like funeral pyres for ambition. The balcony chamber is ahead. The guard said the Queen is expecting you. Any advice? Be honest. She values honesty above almost everything else. That seems like a contradiction given all the rebellions. Honesty and agreement are not the same thing, envoy. The rebels were honest about their objections. She was honest about the consequences. The guard gestured forward with one armored hand. We will wait here. Return when she dismisses you or do not return. Both outcomes have occurred before. That's deeply comforting, thank you. We aim to serve. Aiden walked down the transparent corridor alone, his footsteps silent on the crystalline floor. The battle raged to his left, ships dying in silence. To his right, stars burned with ancient indifference. Ahead, through an archway that seemed to open directly onto space itself, he could see a figure silhouetted against the burning dark. Saralith was waiting. Aiden's mouth went dry and he thought about Chen's offer to send final messages. Then he thought about his mother, worrying, and decided if he was going to die, it should at least be while doing something interesting. He stepped through the archway. The balcony wasn't a balcony so much as an act of architectural defiance against the concept of enclosed spaces. One entire wall simply wasn't there, replaced by an invisible field that held back the void while letting starlight pour through like liquid silver. Aiden's ears popped as he crossed the threshold, and his hindbrain started screaming that he was about to be sucked into space and should really reconsider his career choices. Saralith turned and Aiden forgot about his hindbrain entirely. She was tall, easily a head above him, and her skin held a deep violet hue he'd seen in the guards, but somehow more vivid, as if she contained her own light source and was being polite about not outshining the stars. Her ears swept back in elegant points that would have made every fantasy artist in human space weep with professional jealousy, but it was her eyes that stopped him, cold, luminous, silver with flecks of gold, like someone had captured a nebula and convinced it to function as irises. When those eyes focused on him, Aiden had the distinct impression of being cataloged, analyzed, and filed away under interesting specimen, handle with conditional care. Envoy Aiden Cormac, she said, and her voice did things to the air that made his spine straighten involuntarily. It was like listening to a cello played by someone who knew exactly which notes made you remember every mistake you'd ever made. You are punctual, unusual for your species. Aiden managed something resembling a bow, which was difficult given that his knees were considering mutiny. Your Majesty, I try to be predictable in at least one aspect of my personality. Her head tilted slightly, ears shifting in a way that might have indicated curiosity or amusement, or the precursor to having him thrown out the knot wall. Humor under stress, also unusual. Most of your diplomatic corps resort to excessive formality when frightened. I find excessive formality makes me more frightened, which creates a problematic feedback loop. Efficient. She moved toward the opening and her robes flowed like liquid mercury, catching light that didn't seem to come from any particular source. Do you know why they rebelled, Envoy? Aiden glanced at the burning ships below. A rebel destroyer was trying to make a run for it, engines flaring with desperate brilliance. 3 of Sarala's frigates intercepted it with the casual precision of predators who done this so often they could probably do it in their sleep. I don't, Your Majesty. Because I told them the truth. She gestured at the destruction with one long-fingered hand. Strange how often honesty provokes violence. I informed them that our civilization was changing, that the old ways of governance were insufficient for what we were becoming. I offered them partnership in that transformation. The rebel destroyer came apart in a flash that lit her face from below. They chose to interpret partnership as threat. In fairness, people often do that when the person offering partnership commands moon-cracking fleets. Her smile was sharp enough to cut hyperspace. You are either very brave or very foolish, envoy. I've been assured they're not mutually exclusive. True. She stepped closer and he caught her scent, something like rain on stone, mixed with ozone and that same floral note that permeated the citadel. I summoned you for a similar reason. The truth about your mission here, envoy, is about to become complicated. Aiden's stomach did something acrobatic. My mission is trade route negotiation and cultural exchange. It's very straightforward. I have 17 different documents outlining exactly how straightforward it is. Yes, I've read them. Your council has excellent technical writers, very thorough, exceptionally boring. Those luminous eyes fixed on him again. They also sent you with a second mission, one not included in your 17 documents. You are here to assess whether my dynasty is stable enough to trust with expanded access to human space, whether we are safe partners or potential threats, whether our internal conflicts suggest weakness that could be exploited or strength that should be feared. The acrobatic thing his stomach was doing evolved into a full gymnastics routine. Your Majesty, I wasn't informed of any secondary objectives. I know your biosigns betrayed your ignorance the moment I mentioned it. Useful. It confirms you are not complicit in the deception, merely a tool of it. She turned back to the battle. Another ship died, this one without even attempting to flee. Your superiors did not trust you with the full scope of your mission because they feared I would read it in your behavior. They were correct to fear that. They were incorrect to assume I would punish you for it. That's remarkably generous given the circumstances. I am not generous, envoy. I am practical. She paced along the edge of the knot wall, backlit by an exploding rebel carrier that painted her silhouette in shades of catastrophe. My empire is fracturing, not from weakness but from growth. We are becoming something new, and my people fear transformation the way yours fears the dark, the unknown, the chain that cannot be controlled or predicted or filed away in 17 very thorough documents. Aiden watched her move, watched the way the light caught her features, and thought that if this was how he died, at least the view was spectacular. Your Majesty, why are you telling me this? She stopped, turning to face him fully. Because your council wants to know if we will survive the metamorphosis. They do not realize they should be asking if they will survive what we become. Her expression shifted, something almost vulnerable flickering across her features before her composure snapped back like armor. And because I am not angry with your people for their caution, I am angry with the timing. The timing. Yes. She raised one hand, and he noticed her fingers trembled slightly before she closed them into a fist. I am angry that I need you, Envoy Aiden Cormac. I am angry that circumstances have made you necessary, and I am extremely angry that I am about to ask you to betray everything your training has taught you about diplomatic protocol. Aiden's mouth went dry. That sounds ominous. It should. I am not known for understatement. She stepped close enough that he could feel warmth radiating from her skin. Tell me, envoy, how do you feel about treason? Aiden had prepared for many scenarios during his diplomatic training. Hostage situations, cultural misunderstandings involving accidentally sacred footwear. That one memorable incident where complimenting someone's offspring had somehow constituted a marriage proposal, but nobody had covered what to do when an alien queen casually asked your opinion on treason while ships exploded in the background like the universe's most dramatic PowerPoint presentation. Treason, he repeated, because sometimes when your brain stopped working, your mouth just kept going out of habit. The betraying your government, potentially getting executed kind of treason. Is there another kind? I mean, there's probably small treason, minor treason, treason adjacent activities that maybe just get you demoted instead of vaporized. Saralith's expression did something complicated that might have been amusement or might have been her reconsidering whether he was worth the effort of this conversation. Your species has such interesting approaches to existential threats. You attempt to negotiate with categories. It's a coping mechanism. I have several. Would you like to hear about the others? No. She moved back toward the knot wall, and Aiden's nervous system relaxed marginally now that she wasn't close enough for him to feel the heat of her skin and smell that rain on stone scent. That made his thoughts go sideways. The rebels you see dying out there are not the disease, envoy. They are a symptom, a painful, dramatic symptom that unfortunately requires violent treatment, but a symptom nonetheless. And the disease elements within my own court are feeding your intelligence agencies false information about our stability. They are carefully, methodically making it appear that my dynasty is on the verge of collapse, that our internal conflicts are signs of terminal weakness rather than transformative growth. She gestured at the battle, and Aiden watched another rebel ship break apart, scattering escape pods like seeds into the dark. They believe if they can make humanity perceive us as vulnerable, your government will attempt intervention, military intervention. Aiden's stomach, which had been doing gymnastics, now attempted an interpretation of abstract expressionist dance. That would be catastrophic, yes, for both our peoples. She turned those luminous eyes on him again. But my court conspirators are not stupid. They understand catastrophe. They believe that if they can provoke an external attack, it will unite my fractured empire against a common enemy. Classic strategy used successfully by governments across the galaxy for millennia. Except humanity would lose that war. Possibly, probably the casualties would be extraordinary on both sides before we reached any kind of resolution. Her jaw tightened, and the conspirators find that acceptable. They value unity over survival, tradition over evolution. They would rather rule over ruins than adapt to something new. Aiden walked to the edge of the knot wall, testing it with one hesitant hand. The field held a barely perceptible resistance, like pressing against warm honey. Beyond it, the void stretched infinite and indifferent. Your Majesty, if I report what you're telling me, it could trigger exactly the kind of panic response you're trying to prevent. My superiors will assume you're trying to manipulate me, that this whole conversation is designed to make us lower our guard or second-guess our intelligence, correct? And if I don't report it, I'm betraying my oath to my government and potentially letting them walk into a trap based on false intelligence. Also correct. So basically, I'm damned either way, and you're asking me to choose which particular flavor of damnation I prefer. Saralith's smile was sharp and sad in equal measure. I told you this would be complicated. A proximity alarm chimed softly in part of the holographic display near the chamber entrance flickered to life, showing the rebel fleet in full retreat. What remained of it anyway? Aiden counted maybe 15 ships out of what had been at least 60. The survivors were burning hard for the system's edge, their engines leaving trails of distorted space like wounded animals. Bleeding light. They will not make it, Saralith said. Quietly, I have ships waiting in hyperspace at every possible exit vector. This battle ended before it began. They simply had not realized it. Yet that seems excessive. That seems necessary. Every ship that escapes spreads the message that rebellion is viable, that my authority can be challenged, that transformation can be resisted through violence. She crossed her arms, and the gesture made her seem almost human for a moment, tired and frustrated by circumstances beyond easy control. I do not enjoy this, envoy, contrary to what your intelligence reports probably suggest. I do not delight in displays of overwhelming force. I am simply very good at understanding what is required. Is treason required? Yes, she turned to face him fully. I need you to help me lie to both our governments. I need you to file reports that confirm my stability while secretly helping me root out the conspirators, feeding false intelligence to your people. I need you to become complicit in a deception that, if discovered, will end your career and possibly your life. Aiden laughed. He couldn't help it. The sheer audacity of the request, combined with his sleep deprivation and the casual backdrop of interstellar warfare, finally broke through his diplomatic training, and he just laughed. You want me to commit treason on a balcony during a space battle because you asked nicely? Saralith's face did something he hadn't seen before, a flash of genuine surprise, followed by what might have been respect. I want you to help me prevent a war that will kill billions. The nicely is negotiable. Is it, though? Probably not. She stepped closer again, and this time Aiden held his ground, even though every instinct screamed that he was standing too close to someone who could order his death with a thought. I am asking because you are the only human official I have observed who seems to value truth over protocol, because your psychological profile suggests you make decisions based on outcome rather than regulation. And because right now, envoy, I am desperate enough to gamble on an untested variable. That's deeply flattering and terrifying in equal measure. Most worthwhile things are. The silence stretched between them like a quantum entanglement, awkward and impossible to collapse without fundamentally changing the system. Aiden stared at Saralith, and she stared back, her luminous eyes unreadable, while behind her the last of the rebel fleet scattered into hyperspace, only to find Saralith interceptors waiting like patient spiders at every possible exit point. The subsequent explosions painted the void in colors that would have been beautiful if they weren't quite so fatal. So, Aiden said, because someone had to say something, and his sense of self-preservation had apparently gone on vacation. How exactly does one commit treason with you? Is there a form? Do I need to initial something in triplicate? My government loves triplicate. Saralith's ears twitched, which he was learning meant she was either amused or about to have him ejected into space. Possibly both. Your capacity for humor under existential pressure is either admirable or pathological. My therapist says it's both. She's very supportive. You have a therapist. Mandatory for anyone in the diplomatic corps who survived more than 2 assignments involving species that perceive time nonlinearly. Turns out, having conversations where the response comes before the question does things to your brain chemistry. I imagine it would. She moved away from the knot wall, her robes trailing across the crystalline floor with a sound like wind through glass. To answer your question, no forms are required. Treason is refreshingly informal in that regard. Small mercies. Saralith touched a panel on the wall, and the holographic display expanded, filling the center of the chamber with a 3-dimensional star map that made Aiden's eyes water. Systems and trade routes network together in glowing threads, pulsing with data streams he couldn't begin to interpret. She gestured, and several nodes on the map flared red. These are the conspiracy's points of contact with your intelligence networks. Dead drops, encrypted channels, intermediaries who believe they are working with legitimate sources. Her fingers moved through the hologram, isolating systems. They have been feeding your people information for 6 standard months. Carefully curated reports about internal dissent, military setbacks, economic instability, all technically true, all wildly decontextualized. That's how the best lies work, Aiden said, moving closer to study the map. Embed them in truth until you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. Exactly. She pulled up a stream of text in a language that looked like someone had given geometry anxiety. Your intelligence agencies have 3 analysts assigned to interpreting this data. One snorts, is cautious, and recommends continued observation. One is hawkish and argues for immediate intervention. The third is your director of xenopolitical affairs, and she is currently undecided but leaning toward action. How do you know this? Because I am very good at my job, envoy, and because your communication security, while admirable by human standards, is somewhat less sophisticated than you believe. Aiden should probably have been offended on behalf of humanity's cyber warfare divisions, but mostly he was impressed. You've been reading our classified communications, only the ones relevant to my survival. I don't have time to read everything. Most of it is quite boring. Your Director Chen sends an extraordinary number of messages about proper expense report formatting. Director Chen has opinions about formatting, many opinions, strongly held opinions, so I have observed. Saralith collapsed the map back to manageable size. The conspirators are planning to escalate. In 2 standard weeks, they will feed your intelligence a report claiming I have begun purging loyalist factions in preparation for an offensive Against human space, it will be supported by fabricated evidence of military buildups along our shared border, and my government will have to respond. They will have no choice. The political pressure will be overwhelming. Your military will demand preemptive action. Your diplomats will argue for sanctions that we will be forced to interpret as hostile. And GT snorts. And GT, the spiral becomes inevitable. She looked at him, and there, Clear's throat, was something raw in her expression now, a crack in the armor, showing exhaustion underneath. Unless we can prove the intelligence is false before it reaches your decision makers. How would we do that? By identifying the conspirators, by gathering evidence of their manipulation, by building a case so comprehensive that even your hawkish analysts will have to acknowledge they have been deceived. She paused. And by you reporting information to your superiors that confirms my stability, while we work to dismantle the conspiracy from within. Aiden processed this. The sheer scope of it made his head hurt. You want me to lie in my official reports? I want you to emphasize truths that support stability while omitting truths that suggest chaos. Technically not lying, diplomatically adjacent to honesty. That's sophistry. Yes, useful sophistry, but sophistry nonetheless. He walked back to the knot wall, pressing his hand against the field. Again, it was warm, alive somehow, like touching the membrane of something vast and incomprehensible. Your Majesty, why me? You must eye other options. Better options, options that don't involve trusting a human you've never met with information that could destroy you if I decide to report all of this verbatim. Saralith was quiet for a long moment. Another ship died in the distance. Bright flare that faded to nothing. Because I have read every report you have filed in your 2 years as an envoy. Every assessment, every cultural analysis, every seemingly insignificant observation about how non-human species approach conflict resolution. And in all of those reports I have never seen you lie. I'm a diplomat. Lying is in the job description. No, you omit, you emphasize. You carefully select which truths to present. But you do not fabricate, you do not invent. When you do not know something, you admit it rather than speculate. Her eyes caught the starlight. That is extraordinarily rare in your profession, envoy, and it is exactly what I need. Someone who won't lie to you. Someone who understands the difference between necessary deception and betrayal of core truth. She turned to face him fully. I am asking you to deceive your superiors about my immediate stability, while we work to reveal a deeper truth about the conspiracy. It is unethical. It violates your oaths. It could end both our careers or our lives. You're really selling this. I am told honesty is my weakness. Aiden laughed again, shorter this time. More exhausted. What exactly would this treason involve? Specifically, because I need to know exactly how much trouble I'm considering getting into. Saralith smiled, and for the first time since he'd entered the chamber, it reached her eyes. Saralith pulled up another section of the holographic display, and Aiden watched as schematics materialized, showing what looked like architectural plans for a section of the citadel. She highlighted a corridor junction, what the labels identified as the Hall of Dynasties. In 3 days, I will be attending a ceremonial gathering to honor the founding of the third luminous dynasty. It is tradition, unavoidable, extremely public. Her fingers traced a path through the hologram. The conspirators will use this opportunity to stage an assassination attempt against me. Aiden's eyebrows attempted to escape his forehead. They're going to try to kill you at a ceremony in front of witnesses. Not kill, they are not quite that ambitious. She zoomed in on a specific section of the corridor. They will stage an attack designed to fail but appear credible. A lone assassin easily captured who will confess to being hired by elements sympathetic to human expansion. The goal is not my death but the appearance of external threat. Let me guess. This will be the evidence they need to unite your fractured empire against humanity. Precisely. My people will demand retaliation. Your people will deny involvement but look guilty doing it. The spiral I mentioned becomes kinetic. She collapsed the display with a gesture that looked almost irritated. The conspirators believe they are being clever, they are actually being predictable, which is worse. So we stop the assassination. No, we let it happen. Aiden stared at her. I'm sorry, what? We allow the attack to proceed, but we control it. I have already identified the would-be assassin, a minor functionary in the military logistics division, deep in debt, family, in need of medical care. Perfect candidate for recruitment. Her smile was sharp. He has been approached by the conspirators. He has accepted their offer. What he does not know is that I have been monitoring the entire recruitment process. You've been watching them recruit someone to fake assassinate you. Correct, and you're going to let him try. Correct again. Your Majesty, I feel like this plan has several points where things could go catastrophically wrong. Only 7 by my count. I have contingencies for 6 of them. She pulled up another display, this one showing personnel files. Aiden recognized several high-ranking members of Saralith's court. During the staged attack, you will be present as official human observer. When the assassin is captured and claims human backing, you will immediately demand an investigation, full transparency, joint inquiry between our governments. Aiden was starting to see it. And during that investigation, we find evidence of the conspiracy, evidence I have been carefully gathering for months. Communications records, financial transfers, the entire network of contacts between the conspirators and your intelligence services. She looked at him. But the evidence needs to be discovered through official channels. It needs to appear organic. If I simply present it, my political opponents will claim fabrication, so I need to be the one to find it or appear to find it. You need to be the credible human voice, demanding truth while I am the cooperative alien leader allowing unprecedented access to internal investigations. She moved closer. It will be difficult. The conspirators will fight back. They have resources and supporters who believe genuinely in their cause. We will be navigating a political minefield while pretending to investigate an assassination. And if we fail, then the conspiracy succeeds. Our peoples go to war, billions die, and we both spend our last moments regretting this conversation. She said it so matter-of-factly that Aiden almost laughed. But we will not fail. You seem confident. I am confident in probabilities. Our success is not guaranteed, but it is significantly more likely than the alternatives. Her expression softened slightly. And I am confident in you, Envoy Aiden. Cormac, you deflect with humor, but you are not a fool. You understand what is at stake. Aiden looked out at the void, where the battle had finally ended. Surviving rebel ships were gone, fled, Clear's throat, or destroyed. Brieffields glittered like frozen fireworks. Somewhere out there, people were dying in silence because transformation had been mistaken for threat. He thought about his mother worrying about Martinez and her aggressive reasonableness, about Director Chen and her formatting opinions, about all the humans who would burn if this conspiracy succeeded. He thought about the difference between protocol and outcome. And GT, Clear's throat. And GT, between regulation and survival, between the comfort of following orders and the terror of choosing a harder path. All right, he said, I'm in, against my better judgment and probably several laws, but I'm in. And GT, Clear's throat. And GT, Sarilith's smile was genuine this time, relieved and surprised in equal measure. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I haven't actually done anything except agree to complicated treason. The first step is often the hardest. I'll remind you of that when we're both in prison, if we end up in prison. Envoy, I promise the accommodations will be exceptional. Aiden turned to face her fully. The weight of what he just agreed to settled over him like gravity, pulling him into an orbit he couldn't escape even if he wanted to. So what happens now? Now you return to your quarters. You file a report stating that you met with me and found me reasonable, stable, and committed to our alliance. You emphasize the efficient resolution of the rebellion as evidence of strong, centralized authority. She gestured to the empty battlefield. All technically true, diplomatically adjacent to honesty. Exactly. She walked with him toward the archway. In 3 days, you will attend the ceremony. You will witness the assassination attempt, and together we will begin unraveling a conspiracy while pretending to investigate a threat. She paused at the threshold. It will be dangerous. It will be ethically complicated. You will question every decision. Is this where you tell me I can still back out? No, you have already made your choice. I am simply acknowledging it. Wait, her luminous eyes held his, but I want you to know that whatever comes next, you are not alone in carrying it. Aiden felt something shift between them. Some recognition that they were bound now by shared purpose and mutual risk. It was terrifying and strangely steadying. Your Majesty, if we somehow survive this, remind me to tell you about the time I accidentally proposed marriage while complimenting someone's children. I look forward to it, Envoy. He walked back through the transparent corridor, past the guards who said nothing, through the impossible architecture of the Citadel. When he reached his shuttle, Chen was waiting with obvious relief. Sir, you're alive? Surprisingly, yes. Aiden strapped himself into the seat. Take us home. Chen, I have a report to file. As the shuttle pulled away from the threshold of stars, Aiden looked back at the crystalline war citadel hanging in space like a frozen star. Somewhere inside, Sarilith was already preparing for what came next, and so he realized the future was uncertain. The path, Clear's throat, was dangerous, but for The first time in his diplomatic career, Aiden felt like he was doing something that mattered beyond protocols and procedures. He pulled out his data pad and began composing his report, choosing his truths carefully, and tried not to think about how many laws he was breaking. Somewhere in the void, stars burned on, indifferent to the small rebellions of those who tried to shape their own fate.